I did not hold my daughter's hand when she died. That's where I'll start. No soft landing, no polite introduction. She asked for me, and I wasn't there. I was in an airport lounge, arguing with a stranger over a delayed flight, furious about a presentation I thought would change my career. My phone was on silent. I didn't hear it. Not the first call, not the second, not the sixth. By the time I listened to the voicemail, her voice was already weak. "Dad, if you get this, I just wanted to hear you." That message is 43 seconds long. I've listened to it more times than I can count. I am 88 years old. My hands shake when I hold a glass of water. I walk slower than my own thoughts. But that voicemail, it plays in my head with perfect clarity. Every breath, every pause, every small effort she made to sound okay. I wasn't there, and that is something you do not fix. You live with it. You age with it. You carry it like a stone in your chest. You think you'll have time to make things right, don't you? That was my mistake, too. Let me tell you who I was before the silence. I was not a cruel man. At least I didn't think so. I grew up in a small coastal town in Maine. Cold winters, salt in the air, wooden houses that creaked like old bones. My father was a fisherman, hard hands, quiet. He believed love was something you proved by working, not by speaking. He never said he was proud of me, not once. But he paid for my books when I got into college. He worked 2 extra seasons for that. So I learned early, achievement equals love. You perform, you provide, you sacrifice, and that is enough. I left that town at 22 with a single suitcase and a hunger in my chest that felt like ambition, but might have been fear. Fear of being ordinary, fear of ending up like my father, tired and forgotten. I moved to Chicago, tall buildings, noise, opportunity. I liked how nobody knew me. I liked that I could become something, and I did. I worked in finance, long hours, sharp suits. I married a woman named Margaret when I was 29. She had a laugh that filled rooms. She believed in slow dinners and handwritten letters. She believed in presents. We had one child, Emily. When Emily was born, I remember holding her and thinking, I will give you everything. But I misunderstood what everything meant. At first I was present. I changed diapers awkwardly. I read bedtime stories with dramatic voices. I built a crooked treehouse in our backyard and nearly broke my ankle climbing down from it. But then the promotions came, opportunities, responsibility, bigger clients, more money. I told myself I was doing it for them. Who wouldn't want to secure their family's future? I started missing small things first. A school recital because of a critical meeting. A parent-teacher conference because a client flew in last minute. Margaret would stand in the doorway when I came home late. "You missed her solo," she would say softly. "I'm building something," I would reply. Building. That word sounds noble, solid, permanent. But I wasn't building a life. I was building distance. The first time Emily looked disappointed in me, she was 9. She had drawn a picture of our family. It was taped to the refrigerator. Margaret, Emily, and a tall stick figure at the edge of the page, almost outside the frame. "That's you, Dad," she said. "Why am I over there?" "Because you're always leaving." Children don't know they're delivering verdicts. They just tell the truth. I laughed it off. Kids exaggerate, I thought. I had time to correct it. I always thought I had time. When Emily was 16, she stopped asking if I would come to her events. She just told her mother. That should have scared me. But I was in the middle of closing the largest deal of my career. I was on television once, interviewed about market strategies. My name appeared in a business magazine. I framed it. I remember bringing that magazine home. "Look, Em," I said, "that's your old man." She smiled politely. "I'm glad you're happy, Dad." Glad you're happy. There's something in that sentence, isn't there? She didn't say she was proud. She didn't say she was impressed. She said she was glad I was happy, and I didn't hear the distance forming. The turning point came quietly, not with a dramatic explosion. It came the day Emily chose a college on the West Coast, as far from Chicago as she could go without leaving the country. I pretended to be excited. "Adventure," I said. Margaret watched me pack her car. "You're losing her," she whispered. "She's just growing up." "No," Margaret said. "She's leaving." But I was busy. Busy men don't process warnings. We schedule them for later. Later never came. The night Margaret died was different. That wasn't my fault. At least, not directly. She had a stroke in our kitchen, just collapsed while slicing tomatoes. I was home that night, by accident. A snowstorm had canceled my flight. I held her hand in the ambulance. I told her I loved her. I was there. She survived 3 days in the hospital. Emily flew in. We stood on either side of the bed. Margaret looked at me once, a long look. There was something unfinished in it. I don't know if it was forgiveness or disappointment or both. After the funeral, Emily didn't stay long. She hugged me stiffly. "Call me more," she said. "I will," I promised. And for a few months I did. Then work pulled me back into its current, and calls became texts, and texts became silence. If I could sit with my 45-year-old self just once, I wouldn't scream at him. I would just ask him one question: "What exactly are you chasing?" Because I don't think he knew. Do you? Be honest. When you say you're busy, what are you actually running toward? And what are you quietly running away from? I was running from the fear of not being enough, but in doing so, I became absent. And absence is its own kind of betrayal. Years passed, promotions came, awards, a larger apartment downtown after Emily moved away. I told myself it was practical. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. Work was cleaner than intimacy. Emily married a kind man named Daniel. I met him twice before the wedding. I gave a speech that sounded impressive but hollow. She looked beautiful walking down the aisle. I remember thinking, I should have done better. But I didn't know what better meant anymore. We drifted. Birthdays acknowledged with brief calls. Holidays sometimes skipped because of year-end obligations. And then came the phone call. Not the last one, the one before that. "Dad, I've been having some health issues," she said. "What kind?" "Just tired all the time. They're running tests." "Okay," I said, "keep me posted. I'm heading into a meeting." That was my reflex. That was my shield. 2 months later, it wasn't fatigue. It was leukemia, aggressive, advanced. I flew out once. She looked smaller in that hospital bed than she did as a child. "Hey, Dad," she said, trying to smile. I sat beside her, uncomfortable with the tubes, the machines, the smell of antiseptic. "I'm going to beat this," she said. "Of course you are." We spoke like strangers trying to imitate closeness. There were things unsaid, so many things, but I told myself there would be time. After treatment, after recovery, after the storm, there is always an after in the mind of someone who refuses to see the edge. I left after 3 days. I had a quarterly review. She hugged me weakly. "Don't work too hard," she whispered. I smiled, and I left. 3 weeks later, the hospital called again. Complications, critical. I booked the next flight. It was delayed. You know the rest. I listened to her final message in a crowded airport bathroom. I slid down against the tile wall like a man who had finally realized the cost of his ambition. "Tell me honestly, what would you have done differently if you knew the moment you were leaving someone for the last time? Would you still say, 'I'll call you later'? Would you still glance at your watch? Or would you sit down and stay?" That was the day the noise stopped. The promotions stopped mattering. The apartment felt like a hotel room. The awards looked like props. I retired a year later, not out of wisdom, out of collapse. Because without someone to impress, I didn't know who I was. And now at 88, I sit in a smaller place. 1 bedroom, a window that faces a park where children play. Sometimes I watch fathers push swings while checking their phones, and I want to tap on the glass. I want to shout, but they wouldn't hear me. I wouldn't have heard me either. This is not a speech about money being evil. Money fed us, housed us. This is about miscalculation. I thought love would wait. I thought apologies could be scheduled. I thought relationships were durable enough to survive neglect. They aren't. They thin quietly, like ice on a lake, and one day you step through. I still talk to Emily sometimes. Not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet before sleep. "I'm sorry," I say, over and over. There is no reply. That is the punishment. Silence. I did not get to say goodbye. That sentence sounds simple when you say it fast, but stretch it out. Let it sit in your mouth. I did not get to say goodbye. There's a violence in that kind of ending. Not loud, not dramatic, just permanent. When I finally reached the hospital, they walked me down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and quiet defeat. The kind of hallway where nurses don't make eye contact for too long, where the air feels heavier than it should. Daniel was sitting outside her room. My son-in-law, the man who had been there every single day. He stood up when he saw me. He looked older, tired, hollowed out. "She waited," he said. Just that. She waited. There are sentences that forgive you, and there are sentences that expose you. That one exposed me. I went into her room, machine still on, sheets still warm, but she was already gone. I touched her hand. Cold starts quickly. You don't realize how fast warmth leaves the body until you're too late to give any back. I sat there for a long time. I tried to remember the last meaningful thing I had said to her, not logistics, not keep me posted, not I'll call you after this meeting, something real. I couldn't find it. Tell me, have you ever searched your memory in a panic, trying to grab onto something kind you said before it was too late? It's a terrible kind of archaeology, digging through years of half attention and finding mostly dust. After the funeral, people said kind things. She knew you loved her. I'm sure she understood how busy you were. She was proud of you. Were they comforting me or protecting me? I don't know. But pride is a poor substitute for presence, and understanding doesn't erase absence. Daniel didn't blame me, not out loud, but grief sharpens perception. I could see it in the way he avoided certain conversations, in the way he spoke about we when describing the hospital days. He said, we tried everything. He didn't say, you and I, because I wasn't there. And I stayed in her house for 3 nights after the funeral. Her house, it felt strange saying that, as if I were visiting a museum dedicated to a life I had only skimmed. On the kitchen counter was a stack of unopened mail. On the fridge, a photo of her and Daniel at some hiking trail I had never heard of. On the bookshelf, journals. I didn't open them. I was afraid of what I might read. Afraid of what she might have written about me. Cowardice doesn't always look like shouting or anger. Sometimes it looks like not turning a page. On the last morning, Daniel handed me a small box. She kept these, he said. Inside were old things. A ticket stub from a baseball game when she was 10. A photo of the crooked tree house. A napkin from a diner where we once had pancakes on a random Tuesday because she had aced a math test. She kept the small things, the ordinary things. Not my magazine cover, not my awards, not the speeches, just the Tuesday pancake napkin. I sat on her living room floor holding that napkin like it was fragile glass. And for the first time in decades, I cried without trying to control it, because I realized something that broke me open. The moments I considered insignificant were the ones she kept, and the ones I prioritized evaporated. After I retired, people invited me to advisory boards, consulting, mentorship roles. I declined. They thought I was being humble. I wasn't. I just didn't trust my judgment anymore. The compass I had used my whole life had pointed in the wrong direction. If you build a life on the wrong measure of value, how do you know what's right after that? For months I woke up at 4 a.m. Grief does that. It ignores clocks. I would sit in the dark and replay scenes. The recital I missed when she sang a solo. The time she asked me to teach her how to drive and I told her I was too tired. The Thanksgiving I cut short because the market won't wait. The last hug at the hospital before that final flight. There's something cruel about memory. It doesn't show you the awards. It shows you the door closing. One afternoon, about a year after she died, I received a letter, handwritten, Daniel's handwriting. He said he was moving to Oregon, needed a fresh start. He thanked me for coming to the funeral. Then he wrote something that stopped my breathing. She always hoped the two of you would have more time. Hoped, past tense, more time. The very thing I treated like an unlimited resource. You think you'll have more time too, don't you? I did, until time looked back at me and said, no. I went back to Maine that summer, my childhood town. The house was gone, torn down, replaced by something newer. The docks were quieter. I stood by the water where my father used to tie his boat. I used to resent him for not being expressive, for not saying he loved me out loud. But standing there, older than he ever got to be, I understood something. He had been present. He came to my school events even when exhausted. He fixed my bicycle at midnight. He may not have said the words, but he was there. I, on the other hand, had the vocabulary of love and none of the consistency. That realization hurt more than anything else, because I had become the version of father I thought I was escaping, just dressed differently. There were other losses too. Friendships I neglected because I was busy. My younger brother stopped calling after years of one-sided effort. We haven't spoken in 18 years. I used to think I'll fix that when things slow down. Things slowed down, but he didn't come back. People don't pause their lives waiting for you to value them. They adjust. They move on, and eventually they stop reaching. The deepest regret isn't dramatic, it's cumulative. It's realizing that the people who loved you most adjusted to your absence so well that they stopped expecting you. Emily stopped expecting me long before she stopped loving me. That's the part that haunts me, because love was there. I just didn't step into it. Sometimes I visit her grave, not as often as I should. My knees aren't what they used to be. I sit there and talk. I tell her about the park outside my window, about the father pushing the swing while checking his phone, about how I want to shout at him, "Look up!" But I know something now. Advice only lands when someone is ready to hear it. Back then I wouldn't have listened either. I would have thought, he doesn't understand my pressure, my ambition, my responsibilities. But pressure is not unique, ambition is not rare, and responsibility does not excuse neglect. That's a truth I learned too late. There's one more thing, a small, painful detail, the voicemail. The last message she left me. At the end of it, after she said she just wanted to hear me, she added almost as an afterthought, "It's okay if you're busy." That sentence destroys me, because she was still protecting me, still minimizing her own need, still adjusting around my absence, even at the end. Do you see how this works? We teach people how to treat us, and we teach them what to expect. If you repeatedly choose everything else over them, eventually they stop asking, and one day they stop being there. Not out of anger, out of survival. I used to think regret was loud. It isn't. It's quiet. It sits beside you while you drink your coffee. It walks with you to the mailbox. It lies down with you at night, and it whispers, "You had a chance," over and over. I am not telling you to quit your job. I am not telling you to abandon ambition. I am telling you this. When the phone rings and it's someone you love, answer it. When your child asks you to watch something they made, watch it. When your spouse says, "Can we talk?" Sit down. Because the cost of postponing love is not visible immediately. It compounds with interest. And one day you wake up old and there is no one left to prioritize. I don't have many years left. You can feel it when you reach this age, not in a dramatic way, just a soft narrowing. The horizon feels closer, and clarity arrives, whether you asked for it or not. Here is what I know. Success without presence is a lonely trophy.